corner of the world, and it's now on BBC World News.
Terrorists strike at its national game and it's a nation divided. Is Pakistan a country on the brink? This week, with the country still reeling from the attack on a visiting cricket team, we examine the myriad problems facing Pakistan and ask what the international community should do for this nuclear state.
Pakistan, an essential country to the West and a nuclear power, so you can't turn your back on Pakistan.
We speak to the founder of International Television News, Ted Turner, on the economy, the environment, and the future of news.
More and better information, more quickly received, has got to be overall a plus.
Is that everyone?
And after more than 20 years, cult graphic novel The Watchmen hits the big screen. We examine the original comic's enduring appeal. Hello, the attack on Sri Lanka's cricket team in Lahore this week has led to a wave of criticism and bitter infighting over apparent security lapses in Pakistan. Even before the attacks, which killed 6 policemen and a driver and injured 8 tour members, Pakistan was a deeply divided country, rife with corruption, seething with discontent, and unsettled by Islamic fundamentalism. It's considered a frontline state in the West's attempts to fight the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And on top of all that, it has nuclear weapons. Richard Watson reports.
In scenes strongly reminiscent of the attacks on Mumbai, young gunmen, well-equipped and organised, on the streets of Lahore on Tuesday. Minutes after being caught on camera here, they ambushed the Sri Lankan cricket team bus and fired on its police escort.
People were coming from every direction. There was heavy gunfire. We started to pray.
In the days since the attack, there's been much criticism of Pakistan's security plan, particularly over claims that warnings of an imminent attack went unheeded and that security was fatally compromised by a recent government shake-up of senior police in the Punjab province.
I think this was one of the worst security failures in Pakistan. The Pakistan government guaranteed the Sri Lankan cricket team that they would provide them security. And to see the type of security provided to the Sri Lankan cricket team was completely shameful.
This is far more significant than a sporting disaster for Pakistan. It's the latest in a series of terrorist strikes and political crises which expose the country's fragility. If the attackers prove to be homegrown militants, then it will once again throw a long shadow over President Zardari's attempt to keep insurgents in check and international efforts to stabilise the wider region. Just over a year ago, former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto was killed during an election rally in Rawalpindi. Her murderers have not been found. Then there was the half-ton truck bomb at the Marriott. 52 died. Most recently, the government was forced to admit some of the planning for the Mumbai attacks was carried out in Pakistan.
Some part of the conspiracy has taken place in Pakistan, and all those, according to the available information, most of them, they are in our custody.
Suspicion will focus on 2 areas, one near the Afghan border, a stronghold of the Pakistan Taliban, and 2, the Punjab, where madrasas have been used by the militant group Lashkar-e-Taiba in the past, named as being behind the Mumbai attacks. One source said that amongst the armoury recovered were 9mm pistols. 9mm pistols were also issued to the Mumbai terrorists.
The fact that this attack on the Sri Lankan cricket team took place in Lahore is interesting because the Mumbai gunmen were in communication with members of the Lashkar-e-Taiba also based in Lahore. It's one of the main logistical hubs for the LET. Muradek, the main headquarters of the organization, is just on the outskirts of the place. And Lahore is very much a pivotal center for Lashkar-e-Taiba activity over the last 10 years.
Pakistan is being stretched on all fronts. To the west, the Swat Valley has been ravaged by fundamentalist violence.
Swat has been terrorized. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Schools have been blown up. Bodies of dancers and singers, headless bodies, have been found in the main square in Mingora to terrorize people. The violence has been appalling. And the other big question in regard to this agreement is that what happens to those who committed the atrocities? Do they get an amnesty? Do some of them get an amnesty, or do all of them get an amnesty?
To win a truce, President Zardari offered concessions to militants linked to this man, Maulana Fazullah, who's close to the Pakistani Taliban. His supporters want their own Islamic courts, and they say the government has 12 days to accede, otherwise violence will restart. So is the fact that the government is bowing to these threats a sign of a failing state?
I wouldn't say it's a failing state, but I think it's certainly a state that has opened up many fronts. Pakistan, I mean, I say it's not a failing state because Pakistan does have a government that is functioning. Pakistan has an army that is attempting to defend its borders. But Pakistan has many, many problems, and it almost shifts from one crisis to another.
These problems reverberate far beyond Pakistan's borders. Take Afghanistan. Control over the northwest frontier province is vital to stop the Taliban resupply. Take extremism in Pakistan. That's affected by the dispute with India over Kashmir. And take terrorism on the streets of Britain, heavily influenced by British Pakistanis who travel to Al-Qaeda strongholds in Pakistan. There's international concern that if Pakistan unravels, the consequences for terrorism across the world would be grave. One radical idea which has been considered would be to create a new zone between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which would be dominated by the Pashtun tribe.
There's no doubt that the Pashtun tribes are hugely influential and of course are deeply underrepresented in every political sphere. Now, what that would look like, what the solution would, whether it would be some form of new state or simply, or more simply, the recognition of tribal differences and the fault lines between the two of them, I don't know yet. But I think there's no doubt that we must address the importance and the significance of the Pashtun tribes.
Pakistan would see it as suicidal. No country would want to see itself being broken up. And this is something that I've heard about for over at least 2 years. But it is almost said as a wish list by the West.
The focus is now on the investigation into Tuesday's attack. The FBI have offered assistance, as they did with Mumbai. And just how far Pakistan engages with this offer will be seen by the international community as an acid test.
Richard Watson. Well, my colleague Jeremy Paxman discussed the problems of Pakistan with Michael Scheuer, the former head of the CIA's Bin Laden unit, and Mohsin Hamid, who grew up in Lahore and is author of the novel The Reluctant Fundamentalist.
When you hear about this sort of thing happening, you look at the other events happening in Pakistan, the weakness of the government and everything else, does this look to you like a failing state?
It looks like a state in trouble. I think Pakistan, when we say failing state, it's, Somalia comes to mind, and maybe I'm blocked just by emotional attachment from believing that that could happen. But I think that there's many reasons to be hopeful for Pakistan despite the spate of bad news.
Michael